My fiancée hid the engagement ring I bought for her. Then, her family began avoiding us. When a therapist explained it, my world came crashing down. When I went down on one knee at the beach where we had our first date, Lily sank to her knees and wept, screaming yes repeatedly. But then she saw the ring up close when I was putting it on her, and her expression fell. She still allowed me to place it on her finger, but her hand was shaking and she kept gazing at it, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Instead of enjoying the ring, she kept her ring hand hidden in her lap while driving home. When I inquired if she liked it, she said, "I just can't believe you picked this," in a very empty voice. I assumed she was simply overwhelmed by the proposal, but when we arrived home, she immediately removed the ring and placed it in the box, claiming she did not want to ruin it. We almost got into an argument about it, because she almost forgot to put it back on the next morning. We went to brunch with our parents, and her mom saw it. She literally gasped. Her father did not even appear thrilled or congratulate me. Instead, he inquired whether I was making a statement. When I answered no, I just thought it was wonderful. He shared a gaze with his wife as if they were speaking telepathically. Lily's mother drew her aside, whispering, "You don't have to go through with this." This made no sense because they had always adored me. Lily announced our engagement on social media, however she chopped off the photo of the ring due to poor lighting. When her friends wanted to see it in the comments, she kept making excuses about not having professional images shot yet. Her closest friend Sophia came over that night, and when Lily showed her the ring, she just remarked, "Oh my God, he actually did that," and departed without congratulating us. I asked for advice in 3 separate wedding sites about why everyone was acting strangely about the ring, and I gave thorough images from every angle. Every single post was deleted within minutes, and I was banned from 2 boards for clear anger baiting and abusing the community with inappropriate stuff. One moderator messaged me, suggesting that if the photographs were authentic, I should be ashamed of myself. At work, I said that I was engaged, and my coworker requested to view the ring photo on my phone. She glanced at it for about 3 seconds before returning my phone, as if it were infected, and stating, "That's certainly a choice." By lunchtime, everyone in the office was chattering, and my boss called me aside to remind me that although my personal life was my business, I needed to be conscious of work limits. I returned to the jeweler, thinking there could be something amiss. The jeweler recognized me and assured me that he stood by his work, and the ring was precisely what I had asked for, made of authentic materials and professional craftsmanship. When I inquired whether other customers had troubles with comparable designs, he stated he'd never manufactured another ring like this before and probably wouldn't again. Lily began wearing the ring only when we were alone and storing it in a box whenever we went out. When I challenged her, she said she didn't want to lose it, but I knew she was lying. Her sister noticed it during family dinner and instantly said, "Please tell me that's not the real ring." When Lily nodded, her sister fled the table. I asked my mother what she thought. When I showed her the image, she became quiet before asking whether I had purchased it as a joke. When I responded no, she inquired whether I had any mental health difficulties and advised I visit someone. Lily's acquaintances began refusing our wedding planning sessions, and her cousin, who had agreed to be a bridesmaid, dropped out, citing schedule issues. When we went to look at locations, the wedding coordinator noticed the ring and asked whether we were sure we wanted to proceed with the booking. Lily began weeping in the car after that, stating she could no longer do this. I asked her to simply tell me what was wrong with the ring, but she insisted that if I couldn't see it for myself, that was the entire problem. I inspected it with a magnifying lens, seeking for hidden symbols or objectionable images, but it appeared quite normal to me. I even had it assessed by a separate jeweler, who claimed it was worth precisely what I bought and was not only unusual but also technically well made. After 2 months, Lily told me she needed to chat and returned my call. She said that she tried to be comfortable with it because she loved me, but she couldn't marry someone who thought the ring was appropriate. She said that her friends and relatives mounted an intervention, asking her what type of person would gift that ring, and that she could no longer defend me. When I inquired what was wrong with it one more time, she just shook her head and said, "The fact that you genuinely don't know makes this so much worse." She departed and banned my phone number, and when I attempted to sell the ring online, the ad was reported and deleted within hours. Even pawn shops refused to accept it, with one owner claiming he did not want that type of energy in his establishment. I kept the ring in my apartment and stared at it every day, trying to figure out what others saw that I didn't. It was a traditional oval-shaped diamond with tiny sapphires encircling the ring because blue was Lily's favorite color. I assumed it was simply a lovely average ring, but I had no idea how incorrect I was. That first night after Lily went, I spent hours at my desk with the ring under my lamp. I carefully twisted it, seeing the diamond reflect light from every angle. The oval stones gleamed beautifully, and the little blue sapphires surrounding the ring shone like tiny stars. I took a magnifying lens and inspected every detail, seeking for scratches, defects, and hidden symbols. Nothing appeared incorrect to me. I stayed up until 4 a.m., looking at the ring that had shattered my entire existence. My eyes stung from concentrating so hard, but I continued staring, hoping to see whatever dreadful thing everyone else saw. When the light came up, I had not slept at all. But I had an idea. Perhaps if I sketched the ring from memory, I'd discover something that my eyes missed when I looked at it directly. I grabbed some paper and a pencil and began sketching, painstakingly creating the oval form and adding the sapphires one at a time. My palm went across the page, duplicating every curve and angle that I'd learned after looking at it all night. The drawing took me an hour to complete, and when I held it up, it looked identical to the genuine ring. Just a conventional, beautiful engagement ring with nothing unusual about it. I was extremely late for work, so I folded the sketch and put it in my pocket. At work, I pretended to be working on spreadsheets while actually thinking about the ring. During lunch, I took out the sketch and placed it on my desk before heading to the restroom. When I returned, 3 of my coworkers were standing near my cubicle with strange expressions on their faces. They scattered as soon as they spotted me approaching, but I noted how they kept looking back at my desk. One of them genuinely shivered and turned away. I took the sketch and shoved it back into my pocket, my face flushing with humiliation. That evening, I knocked on Mrs. Ching's door, holding the ring box. She had lived next door for 8 years and always told me precisely what she felt about everything. I assumed she would be honest with me. She answered the door and smiled as she noticed the package in my hand. I opened it to show her the ring, and her entire expression transformed. She genuinely crossed herself and returned to her apartment. "Get that thing away from me," she murmured in a trembling voice. She shut the door before I could inquire what was wrong. Back in my flat, I opened my laptop and began looking for answers online. I put in everything I could think of regarding oval diamonds, sapphires, and symbolic connotations. Perhaps the combo had a negative connotation in a culture I was unfamiliar with. I spent hours researching gemstone meanings, jewelry symbolism, and wedding traditions from throughout the world. According to what I read, oval diamonds symbolized eternal love, while sapphires represented loyalty and sincerity. Nothing explained why everyone assumed my ring was cursed or bad. The searches only brought up standard wedding websites with happy couples and lovely rings that looked quite similar to mine. Over the next 3 days, things became increasingly stranger. The Chinese delivery guy always came immediately to my door, but when I responded once while holding the ring box, he halted. Now he just put the food downstairs by the mailboxes and texted me to come grab it. The same thing occurred to my Amazon parcels and pizza delivery. It was as if word had spread that my residence was a place to avoid. A week after Lily left, I decided to take ring images to other jewelry retailers. I printed out photographs from every angle and went to 5 different stores, professing to want something similar manufactured. The first jeweler glanced at the images for about 3 seconds before passing them back over the counter. "We can't help you," he said. The second place recommended that I investigate an entirely new design without explaining why. The third jeweler, an elderly woman with gray hair, gazed at me with sympathy in her eyes. "The proportions are unfortunate," she remarked gently. When I inquired what she meant, she just shook her head. "Have you considered talking to someone about why you can't see it?" she was asking. She gave me a business card for a therapist before I left. The 4th and 5th businesses essentially kicked me out the moment they saw the images. I was beginning to believe that everyone else was insane, but not me. Perhaps I needed to have my eyes tested since something was clearly wrong with the way I was viewing this ring. I scheduled an appointment with an eye doctor for the next day, informing them that I was experiencing eyesight issues. The optometrist performed every test she could, evaluating my eyesight from every angle and distance. She dilated my pupils, shone lights into my eyes, and forced me to read charts until my head hurt. After an hour of exams, she sank back in her chair, puzzled. "Your vision is perfect," she remarked. "Why did you really come here?" I said, pulling out my phone to show her the ring photo. The clipboard slipped out of her grasp and clattered on the floor. Her face became white, and she sprang up so quickly that her chair slid backward against the wall. "You need to leave," she replied, without even pulling up her clipboard. She opened the door and waited there, waiting for me to go. As I passed by her, she murmured something about things that cannot be hidden. I heard her shut the door behind me as soon as I entered the hallway. I lingered in the corridor for a minute, trying to understand what had transpired before returning to my apartment. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about how everyone reacted. So I grabbed my phone and started photographing the ring from every possible angle. I placed it on the kitchen counter and photographed it from above, then from the side, and finally at a 45-degree angle. I positioned it beneath my desk lamp and photographed the diamond, ring, and sapphires up close. I even balanced it on its side to obtain a profile shot. Each shot seemed great to me, with simply a gorgeous engagement ring catching the light. I made an anonymous Reddit account and submitted the photographs in a jewelry thread, asking for honest feedback on the design. Within 12 minutes, the post was deleted, and my account was banned for breaking community guidelines. I tried again in a different forum with a fresh account, and the same thing happened. I posted to the general advice subreddit, and it was instantly reported. 3 separate moderators messaged me, stating I was ill for uploading that type of information. The next morning, as I was preparing coffee, my phone rang. It was my building manager. He stated numerous tenants had complained about me approaching them in the corridor yesterday and attempting to show them something indecent. I said that I was only inquiring about a ring, but he stopped me off and threatened that if there were any more complaints, he would have to initiate eviction procedures. After he hung up, I remembered I had displayed the ring to around 4 or 5 neighbors in the previous week, and they must have all reported me. I spent the remainder of the morning looking for psychologists that specialize in perception issues. I discovered one who had produced articles on visual processing challenges and contacted her office. The receptionist stated there was an opening that afternoon due to a cancellation, so I took it. The office was in a medical building downtown, and as I stepped in, the psychologist greeted me and inquired what brought me there. I took out my phone and showed her the ring images, saying that everyone else noticed something worrisome, but I didn't. She stared at the photographs for about 5 seconds before placing my phone on her desk, face down. She asked me to explain what I observed when looking at the ring. I informed her about the oval diamond, how it reflected light, how the sapphires were evenly distributed around the ring, and the traditional 4-prong setting that contained the primary stone. She took notes the whole time I talked, her pen running quickly across the paper. Her expression became more anxious as I detailed each detail. She inquired why I picked this particular pattern, and I told that I wanted something classic and elegant in Lily's favorite color. She jotted that down as well, and then asked if we could go more into my past. Over the following 3 sessions, we looked over my whole life, seeking for anything that may explain my perception issue. She inquired about my connection with my parents, any traumatic occurrences, my educational background, and past relationships. We discussed how I met Lily, how our relationship worked, and what marriage meant to me. She continued asking about my intentions with the ring design, if I was attempting to convey a message or make a statement. I kept telling her I just wanted something lovely, but she'd jot it down and ask again in a new way. She inquired about my grasp of symbols and forms, if I had studied art or design, and whether I was interested in any cult or religious iconography. After our 3rd session, she stated she needed to discuss with colleagues and would call me to set up our next appointment. While I waited for her response, I remembered a college acquaintance who later became an art professor. I located him on social media and messaged him, requesting his professional opinion on anything. He answered fast, but when I indicated that the ring was causing complications, he insisted we could only meet in public. We decided on a coffee shop near the campus the next afternoon. I arrived early and had the images ready on my phone. He arrived on time, but sat across from me with his coat still on, as if he needed to go fast. I slipped my phone across the table, pulling up the photographs. He looked at them for about 2 seconds before passing the phone back to me. He said that the composition resulted in a highly unpleasant visual story, but when I pressed him to elaborate, he simply shook his head. He stood up and walked away, telling me that certain things were better left unsaid. I grabbed his arm and asked him to help me comprehend, but he backed away, saying he couldn't be engaged in this. That night, I began having nightmares about the ring. In my nightmares, everyone around me could see something hovering above it, like a shadow or a form that was visible to them but invisible to me. I'd wake up and instantly gaze at the ring, hoping to see whatever was in the dream, but it appeared the same as before. The dreams became more vivid each night, with the shadow becoming deeper and more definite, but I couldn't figure out what it was. After a week of having similar nightmares, I decided to hire a private investigator to investigate into the jeweler who manufactured the ring. I located a PI via an internet directory and met him at his office. I said that I wanted to know if the jeweler had purposefully ruined my ring. The PI took the case and stated that he would have preliminary results within a few days. When he phoned me back, he claimed the jeweler had no criminal record, no complaints filed against him, and nothing strange about his past. But he said something fascinating. The jeweler retired soon after creating my ring and relocated out of state. The PI had the jeweler's new address, so I decided I needed to speak with him in person. I drove 6 hours to find him in a little home in a retirement community. When he answered the door, he recognized me instantly, and his face paled. I urged him to explain what he had done with the ring. He welcomed me in, and we sat in his living room, where he said he had simply followed my exact instructions. He took out a folder from a desk drawer and showed me his original notes from our session, as well as the sketches he had created based on my description. He said that when he saw the finished outcome, he should have said anything, but I appeared so pleased with it that he let me take it. I glanced carefully at the sketches he had spread out on the coffee table, and my stomach fell because they didn't seem like what I was holding in my hand. The designs showed a basic oval with little stones around the band that appeared clean and regular. But when I held the actual ring next to the illustrations, something seemed odd. Even though I couldn't name anything, the jeweler kept pointing to certain locations on the paper, then at the ring, drawing lines with his finger as if he was demonstrating something clear, but my eyes couldn't focus on whatever he was attempting to highlight. He took out more paperwork from the folder, including receipts, work orders, and pictures he had taken during the procedure. And in each one, the ring appeared somewhat different, as if it was changing shape as he crafted it. I spent another hour going over everything and photographing his sketches on my phone. However, he eventually asked me to leave since his wife was becoming irritated about having me in their house. The journey back took 6 hours, and I couldn't quit thinking about those designs, pulling over twice to compare the photographs on my phone to the genuine ring resting in its box on my passenger seat. 3 days later, I found myself standing outside a Catholic church downtown, despite the fact that I hadn't attended to church since I was a child. When I knocked, the priest was in his office doing papers. He smiled and let me in until I took out the ring box. When I opened it, his entire body stiffened, and he shoved his chair away from his desk, as if I had showed him something hazardous. He informed me it wasn't a spiritual issue, and that I get professional therapy for whatever caused me to make this. Then he asked me to leave his office immediately. That night I visited an internet community for persons with perceptual issues, hoping that I'd finally met someone who understood. I typed out my entire tale, included images from every angle, and shared it on their help area. Within 10 minutes, my post was deleted, and I received a message from the moderator informing me that I had been banned for trolling vulnerable people with obscene content, and that if I attempted to create another account, they would report me to the site administrators. My phone rang the next morning, and it was my mother, who said my sister was coming up from Colorado because she had told her I was having a crisis. I attempted to reassure my mother I was all right, but she stated my sister had already purchased the ticket and would be there that afternoon. When I picked up my sister from the airport, she hugged me tightly and studied my face for indications of illness, drugs, or whatever. We returned to my flat, where I made coffee while she sat on my couch, and as I pulled out the ring box, her entire mood transformed. She opened it, stared for about a second, and then began weeping and wondering what had happened to me to make me believe this was all right. She continued repeating she didn't understand how her brother could create something like this, as if I had become an entirely new person. She remained for 3 days and continued urging we go to our childhood house, assuming that something from our past would explain why I couldn't see what everyone else did. Our parents still lived in the same house 2 hours away, so we traveled there on Saturday morning and spent the entire day poring through photo albums and old home films. My sister continued asking whether I remembered any specific events, professors, or acquaintances that may help explain this blind hole, but nothing popped out as remarkable. We sifted through my previous paintings, school projects, and art class assignments, looking for any pattern or symbol that matched the ring, but found nothing. My mother prepared dinner and we sat around the table as we were children. However, my sister had a troubled expression on her face the entire time. She flew home the next day after making me swear to visit a doctor, not just a therapist, but a real doctor who could see whether there was anything medically wrong with my brain. I scheduled an appointment with a neurologist the next week, informing the receptionist that I needed to be checked for potential visual processing difficulties. The neurologist, a lady in her 50s, listened to my entire narrative without interrupting, made notes, and then requested a full range of brain scans, including an MRI and CT scan. I spent the whole day at the hospital being tested, lying on machines while they scanned my brain from every angle, looking for tumors, lesions, or anything else that may alter how I view things. The findings came back perfectly normal. There were no anomalies, tumors, or other explanations for why I couldn't see what everyone else saw in the ring. The neurologist appeared perplexed, and recommended me to a specialist who researched unusual cognitive problems, claiming that this was outside of her area of expertise. The specialist worked at a research hospital and had written articles about visual agnosia and other perceptual abnormalities. He looked at the ring images on my phone, had me perform some visual tests, and then leaned back in his chair saying he'd encountered similar situations where individuals couldn't notice certain visual patterns. He stated that it may be selective visual agnosia, in which my brain was unable to interpret the exact pattern that everyone else saw. He further stated that, while exceedingly unusual, there have been reported occurrences in medical literature dating back decades. We spent 3 hours attempting different activities to help me perceive the pattern, such as gazing at the ring through colored filters under various types of light reflected in curved mirrors, and even wearing special glasses designed to aid in visual processing. Nothing worked, and I saw the same stunning oval diamond with sapphires that I had always seen. While he was taking notes on my comments with a worried expression on his face, he suggested I join a support group for those with visual processing issues, stating it could be beneficial to chat to others who had similar illnesses. Every Tuesday night, the group convened in the basement of a community facility. About 12 people sat in a circle and spoke about living with different sorts of agnosia and visual processing issues. When it was my chance to share, I described my predicament and displayed the ring photographs on my phone. Even these people who deal with perception difficulties on a daily basis were uneasy. One woman commented that my condition was unusually serious, and the group leader advised that I would benefit from individual therapy rather than group sessions. I discovered an artist online who claimed she could create visual representations of stuff that others had difficulty comprehending. She worked from a small studio downtown, and when I phoned her she seemed apprehensive, but agreed to meet when I described my position. The studio smelled like paint and turpentine, and she had canvases heaped against the walls. I showed her the ring photographs on my phone, and she pulled back, as if I had shown her something nasty. She said she'd need $800 up front, and I couldn't watch her work or return until she finished. I handed her cash, and she took the images to study them while keeping my phone at arm's length. 3 days later, she called to say the painting was ready, but I had to come alone to have it wrapped. When I arrived at her studio, she had already wrapped the artwork in thick brown paper, with tape around the borders. She delivered it to me hurriedly, as if it were burning, and warned me not to open it in public or near other people. She appeared exhausted, and her hands shook slightly as she handed me the gift. I inquired if she was okay, and she just answered that some subjects were more difficult to paint than others and virtually shoved me out the door. Back in my flat, I sat on my couch, gently removing the tape and unwrapping the brown paper. The art depicted a ring on a dark backdrop, which looked just like what I'd always seen. The oval diamond reflected the light brilliantly, and the little blue sapphires glittered around the ring, just as in real life. I gazed at it for an hour, hoping to see anything new, but it was simply a lovely painting of a gorgeous ring. I wondered whether she had duped me and simply painted what any other individual would paint when asked to paint a ring. My sister was 3 states away, so I contacted her and showed her the painting using video chat on my laptop. She screamed so loudly that I assumed something was wrong with her and asked why I would have anything like that drawn. I informed her that the artist was intended to show me what everyone else saw, and she claimed the artist had portrayed it precisely. But when I looked at the artwork again, it was still the same ordinary ring I had always seen. She requested me to put it away because she couldn't bear looking at it, even on the computer screen. After she hung up, I started creating a spreadsheet on my laptop to record every single reaction I received from the ring. I documented their names, ages, genders, occupations, cultural backgrounds, and precise responses when they viewed it. My coworker was 25, female, and white, and she had stated that it was absolutely an option. The pawnshop proprietor, a man Hispanic about the age of 60, refused to take it. Lily's mother, a 52-year-old Korean woman, gasped and drew her away. After 3 hours, I got 47 responses, and everyone, regardless of age, gender, or background, had the same shocked reaction. I located contact information for researchers at a university that researched mass hysteria and shared delusions, and I sent them my spreadsheet and the ring photographs. Within hours, one researcher phoned me back, expressing how exciting this was and inviting me to their lab for testing. I spent the entire day at the university doing perceptual tests and cognitive evaluations while 3 researchers observed and made notes. They showed me the ring photographs mixed up with other jewelry photos, and I recognized them immediately as they murmured to each other. Finally, they stated that the uniformity of reactions across demographics indicated that the problem was with my perspective, rather than everyone else's. They wanted to take brain scans, but I'd already had them done and they came back normal, so they assumed this was something new to science. A week later, I received an email from a documentary director who had learned about my situation from one of the researchers. She wanted to videotape my voyage to better understand what was going on, thinking it would make an interesting documentary on perception and reality. We spoke on the phone twice, and she appeared really enthused about the proposal and stated she had funds lined up from a streaming service, but she then requested to see the ring images for her attorneys to evaluate before we signed contracts. She phoned again the next day and said her attorneys strongly advised against the idea after seeing the images, and she apologized but had to pass. I was growing desperate, so I searched up a hypnotherapist, hoping that my subconscious could see what my conscious mind couldn't. The hypnotherapist was an elderly woman with a soothing voice who claimed to have helped individuals regain suppressed memories and overcome mental blockages. During our first session, she hypnotized me and asked me to describe the ring in detail. I discussed the oval diamond, sapphires, white gold ring, and how light shone off the facets. She drew me out of hypnosis and instructed me to recount the identical event I had mentioned when awake. We attempted 3 more sessions with different ways, but nothing changed, and I was still unable to see what everyone else saw. During our last session, she sat me down and expressed concern that my mind was sheltering me from something. She stated that our brains occasionally block information that might cause significant psychological harm, and pushing someone to look past that block could be disastrous. She said that the barrier was keeping me functioning, and breaking through it may result in a mental collapse or worse. She advised me to quit forcing myself to see it and realize that my brain had a valid purpose for protecting me. But I couldn't let go. So I discovered a jeweler who specialized in remaking troublesome pieces, such as racist antique jewelry, or rings from failed marriages. She claimed she could help, but she wouldn't look at the ring personally, and would have to rely on descriptions. She proposed we melt it down totally, and start again with the gold stones, but I told her I wanted to figure out what went wrong first. She explained that in jewelry design, certain proportions and angles may produce visual effects that most people find distressing, but she'd need to research it more to provide details. She took out a paper and began sketching circles and lines while discussing the negative space between the oval and the band, resulting in what she called undesirable convergence spots. Her pencil glided over the paper, creating unusual angles and dimensions. But when I glanced at her drawing, it just appeared like a regular ring doodle to me. She kept using terms like asymmetrical tension and visual dissonance, but I couldn't see anything she was saying. After an hour of technical terminology that made no sense to me, I departed much more perplexed than when I had come. 3 days later, I came upon an internet listing for a design session at the local art college that focused on how forms and proportions influence perception. The instructor, a lady in her 50s, wore heavy spectacles and had paint streaks on her fingers. When I showed her the ring photo before class started, she took a step back and said, "This would be perfect for demonstrating when good intentions go horribly wrong." During her presentation, she projected my ring photo, but it was so pixelated that you could barely make out the basic shape. She pointed to various portions of the fuzzy image, explaining how particular curves and angles may produce very uncomfortable visual effects. The other students in the session continued to nod and take notes while I peered at the pixelated blob, attempting to figure out what they were seeing. We practiced tracing shapes with our fingertips on paper without looking. When it was my time to draw the ring's shape from memory, I used smooth curves around the oval and little circles for the sapphires. However, when my fingers moved, several individuals near me sprang up and exited the room clutching their stomachs. One woman literally gagged and dashed to the restroom. My fingertips felt simply smooth curves and conventional forms, while everyone else had bodily reactions to seeing me trace. The teacher interrupted me halfway through and said that was enough for the demonstration. Following the training, I spent weeks exploring the internet for professionals who understood visual perception issues. Most of the physicians I called indicated they couldn't assist after I disclosed the ring problem. But then I discovered a specialist 2 hours away who only worked with persons who had my form of agnosia. Her workplace was in a medical building with plenty of plants and soothing lighting. She was younger than I imagined, with wavy hair and gentle eyes. She stated that our brains may shield us from viewing things that would cause serious psychological discomfort. She said that the protective system was keeping me functioning, and that breaking through it needed to be done cautiously. We began with a groundbreaking approach she created that blended progressive exposure treatment with guided visualization. We started with simple forms like triangles and squares on cards. She'd ask me to look at them as she described what she saw, and I'd attempt to see it myself. We spent hours looking at simple geometric designs while she discussed angles and proportions. Then we progressed to more intricate designs using overlapping forms and curving lines. After 3 weeks of these workouts, she told us we were ready to tackle the actual ring. I brought it in its original box, covered in a towel, since she indicated she wanted to psychologically prepare before gazing at it. She had me hold the ring while she sat across from me and described each part in detail. She discussed the oval's particular proportions and how the sapphires formed a pattern around it. For a brief moment, I thought I noticed a movement in the pattern, as if the stones were moving or the oval was changing shape. Then it vanished and the ring appeared normal again. We continued having sessions twice a week for another month. She would ask me to look at the ring from various angles as she recounted what she saw. I began to realize that the proportions were somewhat incorrect. The oval was not as perfect as I had previously assumed. The sapphires on the ring formed a strange pattern that my eyes wanted to skim over. During one session, she pulled out a curved mirror similar to those used in parking garages. She asked me to hold up the ring and look at its reflection in the curved surface. The distortion caused by the mirror altered the appearance of the forms. For a little moment I saw it clearly. The oval and sapphires combined created something that made my stomach spin painfully. It was similar to optical illusions in which you suddenly glimpse a hidden image, only that this hidden image was something really wrong. The vision vanished as fast as it emerged, but I knew it was there. I couldn't get away from the notion that something dreadful was lurking in the design, even if I couldn't recall the picture. My hands were shaking, so I had to set the ring down. The doctor stated this was improvement, but we should be careful not to push too hard. Over the next several meetings we discussed coping techniques for living with this knowing. She made me realize that my brain's protective mechanism was probably stopping me from having a total collapse. She said, "Some people's minds create these blocks to maintain basic functioning when faced with something too disturbing to process." We practiced breathing exercises and grounding techniques for when I felt overwhelmed by the knowledge that something was wrong, even without seeing it fully. She advised me to keep the ring hidden and try not to think about it too much. But I couldn't stop wondering what everyone else saw so plainly that my brain refused to let me see. I contacted around to locate someone who could thoroughly destroy the ring. Most jewelers wanted to melt it down for the gold stones, but I desired it gone completely. Finally, I met a person downtown who worked with industrial equipment and agreed to do it. When I brought the ring in, he immediately put on large welding goggles and hefty work gloves. He began by crushing the pieces with a machine before melting them with a torch that burned much hotter than regular jewelry equipment. The entire process took less than 10 minutes, and when it was finished, there was nothing left but slag, which he scooped into a hazardous waste container. Walking out of that shop, I felt my shoulders relax and realized I had been holding them tight for months. My entire body felt lighter, as if I had been carrying something heavy without realizing it. Over the next 2 weeks, individuals resumed their customary behavior around me. My sister came over and remarked I looked better than I had in months, and my skin had more color. At work, folks stopped avoiding me in the halls and began engaging me in lunch arrangements again. The difference was so clear that I knew the ring was impacting everything, even though it was just sitting in my apartment. I debated whether to approach Lily and eventually decided to write her a letter. Her sister consented to pass it forward, but made it obvious that Lily might not read it. I kept the letter short and did not want anything in return. I just said that I realized there was something seriously wrong with the ring, even though I couldn't completely see what it was. I apologized for putting her through that, and I understood why she needed to go. Her sister texted me a week later saying Lily had read it and appreciated my acknowledgement of the situation. That was all, yet it seemed like a closure. I continued to attend to therapy twice a week to try to figure out what had occurred. We went through several stages in my life where I missed clear social clues or simply misinterpreted events. I had a tendency to miss things that everyone else did. My therapist assisted me in developing skills for seeking advice from others before making major decisions. She taught me to search for and trust consensus, even if I couldn't see why. After 6 months, my mental state had improved significantly. I had come to realize that my perception differed from most people's in some basic sense. Rather than battling it or forcing myself to see what others did, I learned to work around it. When several individuals agreed that something was wrong, I trusted them while not knowing why. This method helped me avoid difficulties that I might have overlooked on my own. I began helping at a support group for persons with various perceptual impairments. Some were face-blind, some couldn't understand certain visual patterns, and a few had issues identical to mine. Sharing my tale made them feel less lonely and insane. They helped me learn that having a different perspective on the world was not always negative, it was just different. We had to be more cautious and rely on others, but we were still able to live normal lives. After 8 months, I felt ready to start dating again. I was open about my perception concerns without delving into the entire ring tale. Most folks were understanding, and some were even interested in how I saw the world differently. When I started seeing someone on a regular basis, I made it a point to let her choose any jewelry or presents with visual design elements. She praised my candor and stated it demonstrated maturity because I acknowledged my shortcomings. We took things slowly, and I was continually checking in with her friends and family to ensure I wasn't overlooking any red signs. Looking back, the entire ring episode taught me more about myself than years of regular living could have. I discovered that our brains occasionally prevent us from perceiving certain things, and that protection may be what keeps us functional. I learned to trust people when everyone sees something I don't. Most significantly, I learned that being different does not imply being incorrect. It just means I need to be more cautious and modest about my limitations. The ring is no longer with me, but the lessons it taught me will last a lifetime. That was a really enjoyable ride.